3 months. That's how long I've been at Morrison Associates, and I'm still not sure if I belong here. The corporate world feels like a language I'm still learning to speak.
Ow.
All buzzwords and unspoken hierarchies I'm supposed to understand, but don't. It's Friday evening, 8 o'clock, and I'm hunched over my desk in an office. That's mostly empty, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and distant traffic 20 floors below. Most desks are cleared for the weekend, computer monitors dark, but I'm still here finishing the Henderson presentation because that's what eager new hires. We stay late and try to prove we're worth the salary they're paying us. The food chain here is pretty simple. At the bottom, you've got us the fresh-faced college grads desperately trying to prove ourselves. Above us, the account managers who've been here long enough to have actual opinions in meetings. Then the senior staff, the ones with real offices, and doors that close. And then there's Diane Morrison, Senior Director of Marketing, daughter of the firm's founder, and the person who somehow saw something in my fumbling interview performance worth hiring. Everyone here either wants to impress her or is slightly intimidated by her. Honestly, I'm both. I save my work and lean back, surveying the empty cubicle farm. My gaze drifts toward the executive offices lining the far wall where warm light spills from a corner office. Through the glass walls, I can see Diane still at her desk, phone pressed to her ear. She's been different lately. Still brilliant in meetings, still the person everyone turns to when a campaign needs saving. But there's something underneath, like she's carrying weight the rest of us can't see. I watch as she hangs up and runs her hands through her hair, a gesture that seems tired rather than her usual composed confidence. The phone on my desk rings. Cutting through the quiet office, the caller ID shows D. Morrison, IXT 4421, and my pulse quickens slightly. Alex Chen, I answer. Alex, it's Diane. Are you still in the building? Her voice is softer than usual, less controlled, more personal somehow. Yeah, just finishing up the Henderson presentation. Is everything okay? There's a pause, and when she speaks again, her professional mask seems to slip just slightly. I hate to ask this so late on a Friday, but we have a situation with the Meridian account. Their CEO wants to see revised projections first thing Monday morning, and I could really use a second pair of eyes on the numbers. I was already on my way, I say without hesitation. The words come out before I fully process them. There's another pause, this one different, warmer somehow. You were already on your way? I mean, I was just packing up, but I'm happy to help. Should I come to your office? I realize what I said and feel heat rise in my cheeks. That would be perfect. Thank you, Alex. I hang up and stare at the phone for a moment. Was I already on my way? What did that even mean? I had no weekend plans, no one waiting for me at home, just Netflix and leftover Chinese food. But something about sitting in this empty office, watching her work alone in that glass box, made me hope she'd need something. Anything. I walked toward Diane's office, noting how different the executive floor feels after hours. The polished marble floors echo my footsteps. The cityscape beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows transforms the space into something almost intimate. I knock lightly on her doorframe, and she looks up. For just a moment, relief flickers across her features before her professional smile returns. Come in. I'm sorry to keep you so late, she says, gesturing to her computer screen where a PowerPoint presentation is open. I move around to her side of the desk, close enough to catch a hint of her perfume, something subtle and expensive. No problem. At all. What's the emergency? The Meridian projections? Tom Mitchell called an hour ago wanting to see different scenarios for their Q4 launch. The thing is, she pauses, looking at the screen rather than at me. It's not really that urgent. I could have handled this Monday morning. I study her profile, noting the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers fidget with her pen. You called anyway, but I called anyway. There's honesty in that admission that catches me off guard. In the 3 months I've worked here, Diane has been nothing if not efficient, purposeful. Every conversation has been about deadlines and deliverables. Long week? I ask gently. She laughs, but there's something rueful in it. Long year? More like it. Sometimes I think I forgot what silence sounds like. Then everyone goes home and The office gets quiet, and I remember that silence can be worse than noise. She seems surprised by her own candor, quickly turning back to the computer screen. Anyway, if you could look at slide 12, I think the metrics might be off. I lean over her shoulder to examine the screen, but find myself distracted by the revelation. This isn't about work at all. The numbers look fine to me. But if you want to run through the whole presentation, make sure everything flows properly. Would you mind? I know it's your Friday night. Well, Friday night. I was planning to reorganize my sock drawer. That earns me a genuine laugh, the first time I've heard her laugh. When it wasn't in response to a client's joke or a colleague's small talk. Sock drawer organization. That does sound like a wild evening. I live dangerously. Sometimes I even separate the athletic socks from the dress socks. A rebel. Like that in an employee. The word employee hangs in the air for a moment, a reminder of the professional boundary between us. But something about the empty office, the city lights beyond the windows, makes that boundary feel less solid than usual. What about you? Weekend plans, I ask. She hesitates. I have a book I've been meaning to finish, some wine that's been sitting in my kitchen for months. Maybe I'll finally open it. What's the book? It's actually a bit embarrassing. The Goldfinch. I know it's been out forever, but I never got around to it. Donna Tartt. It's not embarrassing at all. That book destroyed me in the end. Best possible way. She turns to face me fully. You've read it? Twice. Once in college. Once last year, when I needed something to get lost in. It's heavy, but beautiful. Like being in a museum where every painting tells you something about loss. Diane stares at me for a moment, as if seeing me for the first time. I wouldn't have expected. Most people your age are more into mindless entertainment? Twitter threads? Trust me, I consume my share of garbage content. But sometimes you need something that reminds you why words matter. Yes, exactly that. We work side by side for the next hour, but the conversation keeps drifting away from Meridian's projections. I learn that Diane reads voraciously, has strong opinions about coffee, and once spent a summer backpacking through Eastern Europe. She discovers that I write in my spare time, have never been outside the country, and feel perpetually like I'm pretending to be an adult. You know what's strange? She says, closing her laptop. I've been in this office for 6 years, and I don't think I've ever had a conversation like this here. What kind of conversation? One where I forgot I was supposed to be the boss. I look around the office at the awards on the walls, the family photos on the desk, the expensive furniture that speaks of success and authority. But right now, with Diane's hair slightly mussed and her blazer draped over her chair, it just feels like a room where two people happen to be talking. Maybe that's not such a bad thing to forget sometimes. She stands, gathering her things. Maybe not. Though I should probably let you get to that sock drawer before it's too late. The socks can wait. This was ... nice. It was... We walked to the elevator together, the spell of the evening not quite broken, but shifting into something more cautious. As the elevator doors open, Diane turns to me. Alex, thank you, not just for staying late, but for ... talking. I needed that more than I realized. I mean it. The elevator doors close between us, and I'm left standing in the empty hallway, replaying the evening in my mind. I rode the elevator down thinking about books and loneliness in the way. Her voice changed when she stopped being a director and started being just ... Diane. I didn't know what had just happened, but I knew something had shifted. Like a door opening that I hadn't even noticed was closed. Monday morning arrives with the familiar buzz of office life resuming. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the coffee machine working overtime as everyone shakes off their weekend stupor. But something feels different as I settle into my cubicle, and I can't shake the memory of Friday night's conversation. When I head to the break room for my usual morning caffeine fix, I find Diane already there, measuring coffee with the precision of someone who takes their morning ritual seriously. She looks up when I enter, and for just a moment, there's a flicker of something, recognition, maybe, or shared memory, before her professional smile slides into place. Good morning, Alex. How was your weekend? She asks, but her voice carries a subtle warmth, that wasn't there before Friday night. Quiet, productive sock organization, I reply. And she laughs, actually laughs, while Marcus walks in behind me, oblivious to the undercurrent of our exchange. Morning, you two. Diane, that presentation you sent out Friday was brilliant. The meridian projections really popped. Marcus pours his coffee with the enthusiasm of someone genuinely excited about quarterly forecasts. And I notice how Diane's posture shifts slightly, becoming more guarded. Thank you, Marcus. Alex actually provided some valuable input on those numbers. The compliment catches me off guard, partly because it's true, I did help. Even if that wasn't really why she called, but mostly because of the way she says my name, like it carries more weight than it used to. The moment passes quickly, but Marcus notices enough to raise an eyebrow as we walk back to our desks. Someone's making an impression on the boss, he says with a grin that's entirely innocent. Keep this up and you'll be running accounts before the rest of us figure out what we're doing. 2 weeks pass in a strange dance of professional courtesy, punctuated by moments of loaded glances across conference rooms and carefully casual conversations by the elevator. I find myself staying later than necessary, ostensibly to get ahead on projects, but really because I'm hoping for another phone call, another excuse to sit in that empty office and talk about books and loneliness. When it finally comes, Diane's voice on my extension asking if I'd like to help prepare for the Hartwell pitch, I don't even pretend to hesitate. I'll be right there, I say. And this time we both know exactly what we're agreeing to. This evening unfolds differently than the last. Diane orders Chinese food to the office. We spread documents across her conference table like we're settling in for a long siege. As we work, she tells me about her divorce, how it felt like waking up from a 10-year dream to find herself in a life that didn't quite fit anymore. I share my own displacement, the way college felt like dress rehearsal for a play I never learned the lines to, how everyone my age seems to have figured out some secret about adulthood that I'm still missing. The conversation flows between professional analysis and personal confession so seamlessly that when she reaches across the table to point out a discrepancy in the budget projections, her hand-brushing mind feels like the most natural thing in the world. Sorry, she says, but she doesn't pull her hand away immediately. Neither do I for a few seconds. We're just two people whose fingers happen to be touching over a spreadsheet about marketing demographics. But the electricity of that contact makes the rest of the office disappear. Marcus's voice echoes in my head the next day as he leans against my cubicle, coffee in hand and that same innocent grin on his face. Dude, you are seriously living the dream. Diane Morrison asking for your input on major pitches? Half the senior staff would kill for that kind of access. Johnson from accounts was asking me how you managed to get on her radar so fast. He takes a sip of his coffee, completely oblivious to the way his words make my stomach twist. With guilt, just don't let it go to your head, you know? She's probably just being nice because you're new. But still, pretty sweet mentorship situation you've got going. I nod and smile and make appropriate responses, but all I can think about is how wrong he is and how impossible it would be to explain what's really happening. Marcus sees professional opportunity where I'm starting to see something much more complicated, dangerous. A month into what I've started thinking of as our pattern, Diane calls on a Thursday evening when her voice sounds different, roar, less controlled than usual. The divorce papers came through today, she says. Without preamble when I answer, I know it's late, but I could really use help with the quarterly reports. Would you mind? I find her in her office, with papers scattered across every surface, and her usually perfect composure completely shattered. She looks up when I knock, and I can see she's been crying. Without thinking, I stop by the break room to make 2 cups of coffee, real coffee, not the swill from the machine, and when I return, I don't sit across from her desk like usual. Instead, I pull a chair around to her side, close enough that our knees almost touch. I've been calling you, she says quietly, accepting the coffee with hands that tremble slightly. Because I don't want to go home to my empty apartment, because sitting here alone feels less lonely than sitting there alone, and at least here, I have a reason to be awake at midnight. I've been hoping you'd call. I admit, and the confession hangs between us like a bridge we're both afraid to cross. Not because of work, because of this, whatever this is. She sets down her coffee and looks at me, really looks at me, and I can see her wrestling with something. Alex, I need you to know that I'm attracted to you, that these past few weeks have meant more to me than they should, and that scares the hell out of me. We're leaning toward each other without either of us deciding to, close enough that I can count her eyelashes. Close enough that when she whispers this is a terrible idea, her breath touches my lips. For a moment that stretches like hours. We balance on the edge of crossing a line that will change everything. Then her phone rings, jarring us back to reality, and we spring apart like guilty teenagers. The next day is torture. Diane is all business, polite, professional, distant in a way that makes me wonder if I imagined the whole evening. During the Hartwell client meeting, we're both so distracted that Tom Hartwell actually stops mid-presentation to ask if we're feeling all right. I catch Marcus watching us with puzzled concern. And when the meeting ends badly, Hartwell postponing his decision pending further review, I can see him trying to figure out what went wrong. Everything okay, man? Marcus asks later, cornering me by the printer. You and Diane both seemed ... off today. Client stuff stressing you out? I lie and tell him I'm fine, that it's just the usual new job pressure, but I can see he doesn't entirely buy it. Marcus knows me well enough to recognize when something's bothering me, even if he can't guess what it is. Friday afternoon, as I'm packing up my desk and trying to decide whether to stay late again or give Diane some space, she appears beside my cubicle. Alex, could I speak with you for a moment? We walk to a small coffee shop 3 blocks from the office, neither of us speaking until we're settled in a corner booth with overpriced lattes and the careful distance of a table between us. The after-work crowd provides enough background noise that we can speak freely without being overheard. We need to talk about what's happening, Diane says, her hands wrapped around her mug like it's anchoring her. About what almost happened last night. The attraction is mutual, I say, because there's no point in pretending otherwise anymore. But you're my boss. You're 12 years older than me. This could destroy both our careers if anyone found out. All of that is true, she agrees. But it's also true that I care about you in ways that have nothing to do with work. That talking with you feels like the first honest conversations I've had in years. That I look forward to these evenings more than I should. We sit in silence. For a long moment, both of us weighing the magnitude of what we're acknowledging. Finally, she reaches across the table and takes my hand, not the accidental brush of fingers over spreadsheets, but a deliberate choice. I don't know what this is, she says, but I know I'm not ready for it to end. Are you? No, I say, and the word carries the weight of every evening we've spent together. Every conversation that's meant more than it should, every moment when the professional distance between us has felt like a costume we're both tired of wearing. But we have to be careful, more careful than we've been. She nods, squeezing my hand once before letting go, very careful. What we're doing, it's not just about us anymore. Other people could get hurt. As we walk back toward the office building, where our cars are parked, I think about Marcus and his innocent enthusiasm about my mentorship opportunity, about the colleagues who see professional advancement where something much more personal is actually growing. The weight of secrecy feels heavier now that we've named what we're protecting. But the alternative, pretending these feelings don't exist, feels impossible. Our coffee shop conversation changes everything and nothing. With its usual corporate theater, but now we're both conscious actors playing roles we've agreed upon. Diane nods professionally when she passes my cubicle, her expression giving away nothing of our weekend planning session, where we outline the rules of whatever this is becoming. The late-night work sessions continue, but they've evolved from professional pretense into something more honest. We still review presentations and analyze market data, but now those tasks serve as comfortable backdrop for conversations that venture into territory we never explored. When we were just boss and employee, 3 weeks after our coffee shop summit, I'm sitting in Diane's office at 10 p.m., ostensibly reviewing campaign materials for the Brennan account when she starts talking about her marriage. Not the divorce logistics she'd mentioned before, but the deeper story, how she'd married David straight out of college, because it seemed like the next logical step. How they'd built a life that looked perfect from the outside, but felt increasingly hollow as the years passed. We had separate bedrooms for the last 2 years, she admits, her voice so quiet I have to lean forward to hear her. Not because we fought, but because we'd become strangers who happened to share the same address. I used to lie awake listening to him watch television in the living room and wonder when we'd stopped being curious about each other. I find myself sharing stories I've never told anyone about the pressure I feel to have my life figured out by 23. About family dinners where my cousins discuss their career trajectories while I'm still trying to understand what I actually want from work, from life, from the 40-year stretch of adulthood I'm supposed to be excited about. Sometimes I feel like everyone got a manual for how to be a grown-up. And I miss the distribution day, I confess, and Diane laughs in recognition. The secret, she says, is that most of us are improvising. We just get better at hiding it. These conversations create an intimacy that's somehow more profound than physical attraction. We become protective of our evening hours together. Both of us finding excuses to stay late, even on nights when there's genuinely nothing urgent to accomplish. Diane starts keeping better coffee in her office, the good stuff from the cafe near her apartment, and I begin bringing books I think she might like. Leaving them casually on her desk with pages marked where I think she'll find something. That resonates. But the secrecy required to protect these moments creates constant tension. During the company happy hour at Murphy's bar, I watched Diane across the crowded room, seeing her laugh at Tom from accounting's terrible jokes, and knowing that in 3 hours, we'll be having a completely different kind of conversation in the quiet sanctuary of her office. When Marcus sidles up beside me, beer in hand and that familiar grin on his face, I have to consciously adjust my expression. "Look at Diane working the room," he says with admiration. "She's got this way of making everyone feel like the most interesting person she's talked to all evening. No wonder she's so successful." Takes a swig of his beer, then nudges my shoulder. "You're lucky to get so much FaceTime with her." Some of the other junior staff are starting to wonder what your secret is. The comment hits like a punch to the stomach, but I manage to keep my voice casual. Just being available when she needs extra help, I guess. Smart strategy. Availability is half of career success. Marcus is completely innocent in his observation, but his words make me hyper-aware of how our arrangement might look to others. When Diane glances in our direction and offers a polite nod, nothing more than she'd give any other employee. I feel both grateful for her discretion and, strangely, disappointed by the necessary distance. The following week brings a closer call. I'm in Diane's office. We're deep in conversation about a book she'd recommended, a memoir about someone rebuilding their life after divorce. When she mentions how the author's description of loneliness resonated with her own experience, there's this passage about eating dinner alone and realizing you've forgotten how to have conversations that aren't about logistics, she's saying when Marcus appears in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt," he says, but his expression suggests he's caught something in our tone. Some intimacy that doesn't quite match the spread of marketing materials on Diane's desk. I was looking for the Hartwell files. Diane smoothly transitions into professional mode, directing Marcus to the appropriate filing cabinet while I busy myself with shuffling papers. But I can feel his curious glance lingering on us. After he leaves, Diane and I sit in silence for several minutes, both understanding how close we came to revealing something that could have complicated everything. "We need to be more careful," she says finally. "I know. But being careful becomes increasingly difficult as our emotional connection deepens. When junior staff members make snide comments about Diane being ice-cold or impossible to please, I find myself defending her with more passion than a casual working relationship would warrant. She's actually incredibly thoughtful. I tell Jenny from graphic design after she complains about Diane's exacting standards. She pushes people because she knows they're capable of better work. Jenny raises an eyebrow. "You sound like you know her pretty well for someone who's been here for months." I backtrack quickly, but the exchange leaves me shaken. How many of these small revelations am I making without realizing it? Meanwhile, Diane's efforts to mentor my career create their own visibility issues. She recommends me for a high-profile project with external clients, suggests I present findings at the monthly staff meeting, includes me in strategy sessions typically reserved for senior employees. Each opportunity is genuinely beneficial for my career development. But Marcus starts joking about my fast track to success, and I catch other junior staff exchanging glances when Diane solicits my opinion during meetings. Maybe I should turn down some of these opportunities, I suggest during one of our evening sessions, but Diane shakes her head. Don't sacrifice your career to protect our secret. It defeats the entire purpose of what we're doing here. What are we doing here? I ask. And it's a question that's been building for weeks. She considers this carefully. I think we're figuring out how to care about each other in a way that fits the constraints we're living with. The constraints become more real than ever. The night we finally cross the physical boundary we've been dancing around for months. We're working late on the Morrison Industries presentation, the biggest pitch of Diane's year. And the stress has us both wound tight. When she accidentally knocks over her coffee, sending papers scattering across the floor, we both dive to collect them. Ending up on our hands and knees beside her desk, close enough that I can smell her shampoo and see the exhaustion in her eyes. Alex, she says, and my name sounds different in her voice. Not professional, not casual, but something tender and uncertain. This time, we lean toward each other. There's no phone to interrupt, no sudden realization of professional boundaries. The kiss is soft, careful, full of all the conversations we've had about books and loneliness and the strange way two people can find each other in the most unlikely circumstances. When we break apart, we don't spring away in panic. Instead, we stay close, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. This changes everything, Diane whispers. I know. You okay with that? I think about Marcus's innocent faith in workplace hierarchies, about the junior staff members who see me as competition, about the dozens of ways this could go wrong and destroy both our careers. Then I think about the past 3 months of conversations that have meant more to me than anything else in my adult life. Yes. We talk until nearly 2 a.m., not about work or books or abstract concepts, but about the specific reality of what we've just acknowledged. We're not teenagers who can afford to be reckless with our feelings. Diane has a career she's spent years building, and I have a future that could be derailed before it really begins. But we're also to people who found something rare and meaningful in each other, and neither of us is willing to walk away from that. We establish rules, Diane says, and her business background shows in the way she approaches our personal situation. Like a project that needs careful management. No contact outside the office that could be traced. No changes in how we interact during business hours. No one, especially not Marcus, can suspect anything beyond professional mentorship. But what about these evenings? We continue them. But we're more careful about timing, about visibility. We remember that what happens here stays here. I nod, understanding the weight of what she's asking. We're essentially agreeing to live a double life, professional distance during the day, emotional and now physical intimacy during our private hours, with a wall between these two realities that must never crack. Can we handle that? I ask. I don't know, she admits, but I know I want to try. As I ride the elevator down to the parking garage, I think about the kiss we shared and the conversation that followed. About the way Diane's hand felt in mine when we shook on our agreement like business partners sealing a deal. Except this. Deal isn't about quarterly projections or client presentations. It's about two people choosing to care for each other within constraints that would make most relationships impossible. The office building is empty except for security guards and the occasional janitor, but tomorrow it will fill again with people who see us only in our professional roles. Marcus will ask about my weekend. Colleagues will observe our interactions for signs of favoritism or impropriety, and we'll navigate all of it while protecting something that feels increasingly precious and increasingly fragile. I drive home, thinking about secrets and the weight they carry, about the strange courage required to let someone matter to you when the world insists they shouldn't. The rules we've established feel both necessary and impossible. But then again, so does everything about what's growing between us. 3 months have passed since that night when everything changed. And somehow we've managed to find a rhythm that works. Our relationship has settled into patterns that feel both carefully constructed and surprisingly natural. From Monday through Friday, Diane is my supervisor, professional, appropriately distant, treating me exactly as she treats every other junior employee. But 3 or 4 evenings a week, When the office empties and the city lights begin to twinkle beyond her windows, we transform into something else entirely. The late-night work sessions have become our sanctuary, a space where we can drop our professional masks and simply be two people who care deeply about each other's thoughts, fears, and dreams. Tonight is typical of our new normal. It's nearly 9 p.m., and we're ostensibly reviewing the quarterly marketing reports. But the conversation has drifted toward more personal territory. Diane is telling me about her weekend, how she finally opened that bottle of wine she'd mentioned months ago and spent Saturday evening reading in her apartment, feeling content rather than lonely for the first time in years. I share my own small victories, a short story I've been working on that finally found its ending, a phone call with my parents where I managed to deflect their questions about my love life without lying outright. These conversations have become the highlight of my weeks, moments when I feel most like myself rather than the eager young professional I play during business hours. Our relationship has evolved beyond the initial attraction into something more complex and sustaining. Diane continues to mentor my career with genuine investment in my success, recommending me for projects that challenge my abilities and including me in strategy sessions where I'm learning skills that typically take years to acquire. But now, this professional development is intertwined with personal care. She notices when I'm stressed about family expectations, remembers details about my writing projects, celebrates my small victories with the kind of attention that makes me feel seen in ways I've never experienced before. In return, I've become someone she can confide in about her fears of starting over at 35. Her complicated relationship with her father's legacy at the company, her growing confidence in her ability to be alone without being lonely, the physical aspect of our relationship remains carefully contained. We kiss, sometimes soft, lingering kisses that feel like punctuation marks at the end of particularly meaningful conversations. But we've both understood without discussing it that anything more would shift the balance we've worked so hard to achieve. There's an intimacy in this restraint, in choosing emotional connection over physical gratification, that feels more mature and sustainable than anything I experienced in college. Relationships. The secrecy has become second nature, but it's not without cost. Last week, Marcus cornered me by the coffee machine with news that made my stomach drop. "Dude, you're not going to believe this," he said, practically vibrating with excitement. "I got the promotion. Senior account coordinator." Diane herself recommended me to Peterson. He was so happy, so genuinely grateful for what he saw as recognition of his hard work, that I felt sick with guilt, because I knew the truth he couldn't see, that his promotion was partly due to conversations I'd had with Diane about his capabilities, recommendations I'd made during our private evenings together that carried weight because of our relationship. "That's incredible, Marcus. You deserve it," I managed, and meant it. Marcus is talented and hardworking, and he would have earned advancement eventually. But the timeline had been influenced by my input, by Diane's trust in my judgment about our colleagues, by the blurred lines between our professional and personal conversations. That evening, I brought up my concerns during one of our sessions. "I keep wondering if we're compromising our professional integrity," I said, watching Diane's face carefully. "Marcus got promoted because I spoke favorably about him to you. That doesn't feel entirely ethical." Diane set down the document she'd been reviewing and gave me her full attention. "Marcus got promoted because he's good at his job and ready for more responsibility. Yes, your input carried weight with me, but not because we're involved, because you work closely with him and have insights into his capabilities that I wouldn't otherwise have. I would have made the same decision based on his performance reviews and project outcomes. But would the timing have been the same?" She considered this honestly. "Maybe not. An influence isn't the same as corruption. I'm not giving opportunities to people who don't deserve them, and I'm not withholding them from people who do. Our relationship makes me more aware of the junior staff dynamics, but it doesn't change my standards." The conversation helped ease my guilt, but it highlighted the moral complexity we navigate daily. We're not doing anything explicitly wrong, but we're also not operating within the clean boundaries that workplace policies assume. We exist in a gray area that requires constant ethical calibration, constant questioning of our motives and decisions. This complexity became even more apparent during the company's annual review cycle. When Peterson called me into his office to discuss my performance, he mentioned how impressed he'd been with my contributions to several high-profile projects. "Diane speaks very highly of your analytical skills and your collaborative approach," he said. "She's recommended you for the accelerated development track, which is quite an honor for someone in their first year." I thanked him professionally, but inside, I was wrestling with familiar questions. Did I earn this opportunity, or was it influenced by Diane's personal feelings for me? The distinction mattered both for my own sense of integrity and for my long-term career prospects. That night, I discussed it with Diane, and she was characteristically direct. "Stop second-guessing yourself," she said. "I recommended you because you're exceptionally good at what you do. Our relationship doesn't change the quality of your work. If anything, it gives me better insight into your potential." You think? I'd risk my own reputation by advancing someone who wasn't qualified. She was right, but the questions lingered. This is the price of secrecy, not just the constant vigilance required to maintain our cover, but the way it colors every professional interaction, making us question motives that might be entirely legitimate. The stakes of discovery became visceral last month during the quarterly executive meeting. I wasn't in the room, but Diane told me afterward that Peterson had made a casual comment about our collaboration. "Morrison, that young analyst you've been working with, Chen, he's got a good instinct for client psychology. You to make an effective team on the complex accounts." Diane said her heart stopped for several seconds before she realized Peterson was simply acknowledging our professional partnership. But the moment served as a stark reminder of how much we both have to lose. Her career, built over years of proving herself in a male-dominated industry, could be destroyed by accusations of impropriety. My future, still taking shape, could be derailed before it really begins. These aren't abstract risks, they're specific. Devastating possibilities that could result from a single, careless moment, a single person connecting the dots we work. So hard to keep separate. Yet despite these risks, despite the constant vigilance and occasional guilt, neither of us wants to end what we've built. The connection we share has become central to both our lives in ways that surprised us. I have never felt more understood or more intellectually stimulated than I do during our evening conversations. Diane has told me that our relationship has helped her rediscover parts of herself she thought she'd lost in her marriage, has given her confidence in her ability to connect authentically with another person. 2 weeks ago, during one of our longer conversations, I asked her directly, "Are you happy with how this turned out?" She was quiet for several minutes, considering not just the question but its implications. "Happy is complicated," she finally said. "I'm grateful, fulfilled in ways I didn't expect. I'm also constantly aware of the fragility of what we have and the sacrifices we make to protect it. Do you regret it? No. Do you?" I thought about Marcus and his innocent enthusiasm, about the colleagues who see professional advancement where something more personal is actually happening, about the weight of secrets and the constant performance our relationship requires. Then I thought about the conversations that have shaped how I think about work, relationships, and the kind of adult I want to become. I thought about feeling seen and valued and intellectually challenged in ways that have accelerated my emotional growth. I thought about Diane's laugh when she's genuinely amused, the way she listens with complete attention, the surprising vulnerability she shows when she talks about her fears and hopes. "No," I said, "I don't regret it. The office feels different now than it did 8 months ago, when I was just an eager new hire trying to figure out corporate hierarchies. I understand the rhythms of this place, know which projects energize me, and which drain me, have developed professional relationships that feel genuine rather than performative. But the most significant change is the way I've learned to navigate complexity, moral, emotional, and professional complexity that doesn't fit into the neat categories I expected adult life to provide. Some evenings, as I wait for Diane to finish her phone calls so we can begin our real conversation, I think about the person I was when I first started working here. That version of myself was looking for mentorship in the traditional sense, someone to guide my career development and help me understand professional expectations. I found that, but I also found Something much more unexpected and valuable. A relationship that exists in the spaces between professional and personal, between appropriate and inappropriate, between conventional and meaningful. I've learned that adult relationships rarely fit the templates we're given. The most important connections often develop in circumstances that make them complicated, require compromises that aren't entirely comfortable, demand choices between different kinds of integrity. Diane and I have chosen to prioritize emotional honesty over social convenience, authentic connection over professional safety. It's not a choice I'd recommend to everyone, and it's not one we made lightly, but it's ours. Last Friday, as we were finishing our review of the Morrison Industries follow-up strategy, Diane mentioned that she'd finally finished The Goldfinch. We talked for nearly an hour about Tart's exploration of loss and beauty, about the way art can become a lifeline during periods of upheaval, about the difference between surviving and living. It was the kind of conversation that makes me grateful. For the path that led us here, despite its complications, the office phone rang as we were packing up, not unusual for a Friday evening. But the timing felt familiar. Diane glanced at the caller ID, then at me, with a small smile that carried months of shared understanding. "Alex," she said, "I know it's late on a Friday, but there's a situation with the Henderson account that could really use your input." I looked at her across the desk where we'd shared so many evenings, so many conversations that started with work and ended with something more personal and sustaining. The question was professional, but we both knew what she was really asking. "Was already on my way," I said, and this time we both understood exactly what those words meant. 6 months. That's how long it's been since Diane first called me on that Friday evening and changed the trajectory of my life in ways I'm still discovering. When I think back to the person I was then, eager, uncertain, desperately trying to decode the mysteries of adult professional life, I barely recognize him. Not because the fundamental parts of me have changed, because I've learned to see those parts more clearly, to value them more deeply, to understand how they fit into the larger puzzle of who I'm becoming. The transformation hasn't been dramatic or sudden. Instead, it's been the kind of gradual shift that happens when someone sees you clearly enough to reflect back aspects of yourself you hadn't fully recognized. Diane has watched me navigate my first year in corporate America with the kind of attention that goes beyond professional interest. And in doing so, she's helped me understand my own strengths and blind spots in ways that have accelerated my growth both personally and professionally. When I second-guess my instincts about a client's needs, she reminds me of times when those same instincts led to breakthrough insights. When I worry that I'm not sophisticated enough for the business world, she points out the value of approaching problems with genuine curiosity rather than predetermined assumptions. But the growth hasn't been one-sided. I've watched Diane rediscover parts of herself that got buried during her marriage, seen her confidence expand beyond professional competence into personal authenticity. The woman who was once afraid of eating dinner alone now talks about weekend solitude as a choice rather than a burden. She's started taking risks, not just in our relationship, but in other areas of her life. She joined a book club, started painting again after a 15-year hiatus, even went on a solo vacation to Portland last month, where she spent 3 days, exploring used bookstores and coffee shops without checking work email once. Our evening conversations have become laboratories for working through the complexities of adult life. When my parents started pressuring me about my career trajectory, wondering why I wasn't already climbing more aggressively toward management roles, Diane helped me articulate something I hadn't been able to express, that I value learning and growth over advancement for its own sake, that I'd rather master my current responsibilities thoroughly than rush toward responsibilities I'm not ready for. When she struggled with guilt about her divorce, wondering if she'd given up to icily on her marriage, I helped her see that staying in a relationship that had stopped nurturing both people wouldn't have been noble. It would have been a different kind of failure. These conversations have taught me that adult relationships are far more nuanced than anything I understood in college. The romantic relationships I had then were built on shared interests, physical attraction. It's the luxury of having time to figure things out without real-world consequences. What Diane and I have is something entirely different. A connection. forged in the constraints of professional life, deepened by mutual respect and intellectual compatibility, sustained by emotional support during genuine life transitions. It's a relationship that exists in the margins of conventional categories, requiring us to write our own rules and navigate ethical territory that has no clear guidelines. I've come to understand that this ambiguity isn't a flaw in our relationship. It's intrinsic to the kind of connection we've developed. We're not trying to build toward traditional milestones like moving in together or meeting each other's families. We're not planning a future that involves public acknowledgement or social integration. Instead, we've created something that serves our current needs and circumstances, something that provides emotional sustenance and intellectual stimulation within the constraints we've accepted. This doesn't make our connection less meaningful than conventional relationships. If anything, the limitations we navigate have forced us to be more intentional about how we care for each other. Every conversation is chosen, every gesture deliberate. We can't take each other for granted because we can't take each other for granted. Our time together is always carved out from other obligations, always protected by mutual understanding of its fragility. Some people might see this as settling, as accepting less than we deserve. But I've learned that meaningful connections aren't measured by their conformity to social expectations. They're measured by how they help us become more fully ourselves, how they support us through difficult transitions, how they add richness and depth to our understanding of life's complexities. By those measures, what Diane and I share has been transformative for both of us. The professional benefits have been real and substantial. Under Diane's mentorship, I've developed skills and confidence that would have taken years to acquire through normal channels. I've been exposed to high-level strategic thinking, given opportunities to contribute to important projects, included in conversations that have shaped my understanding of business psychology and organizational dynamics. But these professional advantages have never felt like the point of our relationship. They've been natural byproducts of genuine care and investment in each other's success. More importantly, our connection has provided emotional stability during a period when everything else in my life felt uncertain. The transition from college to professional life, from theoretical learning to practical application, from potential to performance, these shifts can be disorienting and lonely. Having someone who understood both the external pressures I was facing and the internal doubts I was wrestling with made the entire process more manageable. Diane became not just a mentor, but a witness to my development. Someone who could see patterns and progress that I was too close to recognize myself. I think about Marcus sometimes, about his innocent faith in straightforward professional relationships and clear career trajectories. Part of me envies that simplicity, the ability to see mentorship and advancement in purely transactional terms. But I also recognize that life rarely offers us such clean categories. The most meaningful experiences often happen in the spaces between official roles, in relationships that resist easy definition, in connections that require us to balance competing values and navigate moral complexity without clear guidelines.
What
Diane and I have built together isn't perfect, and it isn't permanent. We both understand that circumstances could change in ways that make our current arrangement unsustainable. But for now, for this period in both our lives, it's exactly what we need. It's a relationship based on mutual respect, intellectual compatibility, and genuine care, sustained by our shared commitment to protecting something rare and valuable. The phone is ringing. Now Diane's extension lighting up on my desk as the office settles into its familiar Friday evening quiet. Outside my cubicle, the building is emptying, colleagues heading home to their weekend plans, their conventional relationships, their predictable social routines. The caller ID shows her name, and I can already hear the professional request she'll make, the reasonable explanation for why she needs my input on some project or presentation, but we both know why she's really calling. She's calling because Friday evening means 2 days without our conversations, without the intellectual connection that has become central to both our weeks. She's calling because she values what we've created together and doesn't want it to be interrupted by something as arbitrary as a weekend. She's calling because, like me, she's learned to treasure the moments when we can drop our professional masks and simply be two people who understand each other. Alex Chen, I answer, though we both know who's calling and why. Alex. It's Diane. I know it's late on a Friday, but I could really use your help with the Morrison Industries follow-up strategy. Would you be available to stay and work through some of the details? The request is professional, reasonable, exactly the kind of thing a dedicated employee would be happy to assist with. But underneath the words, I hear the real question. Will you choose to spend this evening with me? You prioritize our connection over the easier path of going home to your empty apartment and your weekend solitude. I was already on my way, I say. The words carry 6 months of shared understanding, 6 months of choosing each other despite the complications, 6 months of finding meaning in the spaces between conventional categories, because I am already on my way not just to her office, but toward a deeper understanding of what it means to care for someone, within constraints that make that care both more precious and more complex. I'm on my way toward accepting that adult relationships rarely match the templates we're given, that the most meaningful connections often require us to write our own rules and navigate our own moral territory. I'm on my way toward gratitude for finding someone who sees me clearly during this formative time, someone who challenges my thinking and supports my growth, someone who has taught me that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to, but that doesn't make it any less real or valuable. I'm already on my way.